The rain poured down in torrents as Marcus Thompson hurried across the old stone bridge. His 3-year-old son Tommy bundled in a red jacket and pressed against his chest for warmth. At 32, Marcus had learned to navigate the city's streets efficiently, especially on nights like this when every minute meant the difference between getting home dry or soaked to the bone. He was halfway across the bridge when he saw her through the sheets of rain. A young woman in a white dress, standing at the railing with her back to the street. Everything about her posture suggested someone who had reached the end of hope, and Marcus felt his heart skip as he realized what he was witnessing. "Tommy, hold on tight to Daddy," Marcus whispered to his son, quickening his pace toward the figure at the railing. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice cutting through the sound of rain hitting pavement. "Are you all right?" The woman turned slightly, revealing a face streaked with tears and rain. She appeared to be in her mid-20s with blonde hair plastered to her head, and eyes that held the kind of emptiness that comes from profound despair. "Please, just keep walking," she said, her voice barely audible above the storm. "This does not concern you." Marcus moved closer, still holding Tommy protectively. "I am afraid I cannot do that. My name is Marcus, and this is my son, Tommy. We were just walking home, but now I am very concerned about you." The woman looked at him with surprise, as if she had not expected anyone to stop, let alone someone carrying a small child in the rain. "You should not be out here with your little boy. It is dangerous." "You are right," Marcus agreed, stepping closer to the railing. "Which is why I am hoping you will step back from there and help me figure out how to get all 3 of us somewhere safe and dry." She stared at him, clearly taken aback by his calm, matter-of-fact approach to the situation. "You do not understand. I am not someone worth saving. You should take your son and go home." Marcus looked at this young woman who was so lost in her pain that she could not see her own value, and felt something familiar stir in his chest. 3 years ago, after his wife died in a car accident, he had stood in a similar place emotionally, wondering if Tommy would be better off without a father who felt so broken and inadequate. "What is your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Isabella," she replied hesitantly. "Isabella, I want to tell you something that someone told me when I was in a very dark place," Marcus said, adjusting Tommy's position as the little boy watched the interaction with wide, curious eyes. "They told me that the worst moments in our lives are not endings. They are just very difficult chapters in a much longer story." Isabella shook her head, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "You do not know what I have done, what I have lost. There is no coming back from this." "You might be surprised," Marcus replied. 3 years ago I lost my wife in an accident that I blamed myself for. I thought Tommy would be better off in foster care than with a father who could not even keep his own life together. I stood on a bridge much like this one, wondering if everyone would be better off without me. Isabella looked at Tommy, who was now reaching out his small hand toward her with the innocent friendliness of a child who sees only someone who needs comfort. "What changed your mind?" she asked softly. "A stranger stopped to talk to me," Marcus said simply. "A woman who had every reason to keep walking but chose instead to remind me that my story was not over yet. She told me that sometimes the worst thing that happens to us prepares us to help someone else through the same thing." Isabella was quiet for a moment, processing his words. "What if I told you that I have disappointed everyone who ever believed in me? That I have made decisions that hurt people I loved and destroyed relationships that can never be repaired? Then I would tell you that you sound like someone who cares deeply about the people in your life," Marcus replied. "Someone who feels things intensely enough to be devastated by their mistakes. That does not sound like someone beyond redemption to me." The rain continued to pour down around them, but Isabella seemed to be listening in a way she had not been before. Tommy, sensing the gravity of the moment, reached out again and gently touched her hand. "He likes you," Marcus observed. Tommy is usually shy around strangers, but he has good instincts about people. Isabella looked down at the little boy with wonder, as if she had forgotten that innocent connections were still possible. "How old is he?" "3. And he has been my reason for getting up every morning since his mother died. Some days that was the only reason, but it was enough." Isabella knelt down to Tommy's level, and the little boy smiled at her with the radiant warmth that only children possess. In that moment, something shifted in her expression, as if she was remembering what it felt like to matter to someone. "Isabella," Marcus said gently, "whatever brought you here tonight, it does not have to end this way. There are people who can help, different choices you can make tomorrow." She looked up at him, rain dripping from her hair. "Why do you care what happens to me? You do not even know me." "Because someone cared enough to stop for me when I needed it most," Marcus replied. "And because Tommy and I believe that everyone deserves a chance to write a better ending to their story." Isabella stood slowly, taking a step back from the railing. "I do not know how to fix the things I have broken." "You do not have to fix everything tonight," Marcus said with relief. "You just have to decide that tomorrow is worth seeing." As they walked off the bridge together, Isabella learned that Marcus worked 2 jobs to support himself and Tommy, that he lived in a small apartment above a bakery, and that his greatest aspiration was to save enough money to take his son to the zoo. Marcus learned that Isabella was the daughter of one of the city's wealthiest families, that she had been disowned for falling in love with someone her father disapproved of, and that her attempts to prove her independence had led to a series of increasingly desperate decisions. "I have lost everything," Isabella confessed as they took shelter under a nearby storefront awning. "My family, my fiancé, my trust fund. I have been living in my car for 2 weeks." Marcus looked at this young woman who had grown up with every privilege but had never learned that her worth was not determined by other people's approval or disapproval. "Isabella, you have not lost everything," he said quietly. "You still have your life, your intelligence, and the capacity to learn from your mistakes. That is more than many people have." 6 months later, Isabella stood in the offices of Thompson Community Services, a non-profit organization she had founded with Marcus to help families in crisis. Her father had eventually reconciled with her, impressed by her dedication to helping others and her choice to use her restored inheritance for charitable purposes rather than personal luxury. "You know," she said to Marcus as they reviewed applications from families needing assistance, "I used to think success meant having other people's approval. Now I think it means being someone worth approving of." Marcus smiled, watching Tommy play in the corner with toys donated by Isabella's foundation. "That night on the bridge, you asked me why I cared what happened to you. The truth is, I think we saved each other. Sometimes the most important rescues happen not when we pull someone to safety, but when we remind them that their story is not over yet, and help them find the courage to write a better chapter."